On January 9, 2026, as daylight drained out of the Mississippi countryside, Cedarbluff settled into what should have been another forgettable winter evening. The town was small even by rural standards, a place defined by long family histories, quiet roads, and the unspoken assumption that familiarity equaled safety. Porch lights flickered on one by one across scattered homes and trailers, illuminating driveways that rarely saw strangers. In Cedarbluff, people didn't just know their neighbors, they knew their parents, their siblings, and the stories that stretched back generations. Nothing about that Friday hinted that before midnight, 6 people would be dead, a child among them, and the town would be forced to confront violence that did not come from outside, but from within. In places like Cedarbluff, time moves differently. Life is measured not by traffic or deadlines, but by family routines, church calendars, and habits that repeat so often they become invisible. Doors are often left unlocked. Gunfire, when heard, is usually chalked up to hunting or target practice. Serious crime belongs to television, to cities, to somewhere else. That illusion shattered just before 7 p.m. The first call to 911 reported gunshots at a mobile home on David Hill Road. At first, dispatchers treated it like many rural calls, unclear, possibly mistaken. But when deputies arrived, they immediately understood this was something else entirely. Inside the home were 3 men, all related, all fatally shot. Glenn Moore, 67, had lived most of his life in Clay County. He was a father, a fixture in his family, someone whose days followed a predictable rhythm built around home, relatives, and familiarity. His son, Quentin Moore, 33, still tied closely to that family orbit, had grown up in Cedarbluff, surrounded by cousins and uncles who lived within minutes of one another. Willie Ed Geens, 55, an uncle, was part of the same extended network, the kind of family structure common in small towns, where blood ties and proximity overlap until they're almost indistinguishable. They were found shot at close range. Some of the wounds suggested execution-style killings. There were no clear signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture or broken doors that would point to a sudden argument. Whatever had happened unfolded with control and intention, carried out by someone who knew the space and the people inside it. As deputies secured the scene, another detail stood out immediately. A vehicle belonging to one of the victims was missing. That single fact shifted the entire investigation. This was no contained domestic tragedy. The person responsible had left the scene, armed, mobile, and capable of continuing. Alerts went out across Clay County. The quiet roads of Cedarbluff began to fill with patrol cars. Neighbors were told to stay inside. Doors that had never been locked before were bolted shut. But while law enforcement was scrambling to contain what they now feared was an active threat, the violence was already unfolding somewhere else. A short distance away, at another residence, terror was building behind closed doors. According to investigators, the suspect forced his way inside a home occupied by family members, including children. What followed would later become one of the most disturbing chapters of the night. Inside was a 7-year-old girl, related to the suspect, a child whose life had been defined by routine, school days, family gatherings, the small, ordinary milestones that make up childhood in a rural town. She had no connection to the earlier violence except bloodline. Investigators alleged there was an attempted assault, chaos erupting in moments, fear replacing any sense of safety the home once held. Gunfire followed. The child was shot and killed. Another child was threatened but survived. The evidence collected, physical damage, witness statements, forensic findings, told a story of volatility, of control slipping and violence escalating. By the time deputies became aware of this second scene, Cedarbluff was no longer dealing with one crime. It was confronting a moving chain of violence tied together by roads, relationships, and a single person. That person was 24-year-old Derica M. Moore. He was not an outsider. He was born into the same community now reeling from his alleged actions. He had grown up in Cedarbluff, surrounded by many of the same people now locked in their homes. According to public records, he had no significant criminal history. No prior arrests that would have marked him as dangerous. To most, he was familiar, a name, a face, someone seen around town, but not well understood. The kind of person who existed on the periphery of daily life without drawing attention. As the night deepened, Moore's alleged path led to a third location, the Apostolic Church of the Lord Jesus. In Cedarbluff, churches are more than places of worship. They are anchors. Community centers. Spaces where grief and joy are shared openly. On the church grounds stood a residence, and investigators say Moore entered it and opened fire. Inside were Reverend Barry Bradley and his brother, Samuel Bradley. Reverend Bradley was known in the community as a pastor, a man associated with guidance, prayer, and service. His brother Samuel shared that space, connected not by blood to the earlier victims, but by presence and proximity in a town where lives intersect naturally. They were found dead from gunshot wounds. Their deaths shattered any remaining sense of logic investigators were trying to impose on the night. These men were not related to Moore. They were not part of the earlier family violence. The inclusion of a church, of non-family victims, raised questions that would linger long after the suspect was in custody. Why move beyond family? Why target a religious space? Why continue when escape was still possible? As word spread, fear rippled through Cedarbluff. In rural communities, distance is both comfort and liability. Help can be far away. Roads are dark. Every set of headlights becomes a question mark. Law enforcement, now joined by state and federal agencies, established checkpoints and roadblocks, racing to stop the violence before it claimed more lives. Just before midnight, around 11:24 p.m., officers encountered Moore at a checkpoint. He was taken into custody without further bloodshed. Weapons were recovered from the vehicle he was driving, which investigators believe belonged to one of the earlier victims. The immediate threat ended, but the damage was irreversible. By morning, Cedarbluff woke to a reality that felt unreal. 6 people were dead. Families were fractured beyond repair. A church was mourning its leaders. A child's life had ended before it had truly begun. Investigators worked through each scene meticulously, treating them as both individual crime scenes and interconnected pieces of a larger narrative. Ballistics linked evidence across locations. Bloodstain patterns established movement and sequence. Digital forensics searched for motive hidden in messages, calls, or online activity. One of the most unsettling conclusions was how little warning there appeared to be. Moore had not been on law enforcement radar. No open cases. No recorded threats. In a town built on familiarity, the absence of visible danger raised troubling questions about how violence can grow unnoticed. As charges were filed, capital murder, first-degree murder, attempted sexual battery, burglary, and motor vehicle theft, prosecutors made clear they would seek the harshest penalties allowed by law. But legal labels could not answer the question that haunted families and neighbors alike. Why? Glenn Moore, Quinton Moore, and Willie Ed Geens were not statistics. They were family members embedded in daily life. The 7-year-old child was more than a victim, she was a future erased. Reverend Barry Bradley and Samuel Bradley were more than names in a report, they were pillars of a faith community now grappling with loss. Cedarbluff continues to exist, the same roads, the same fields, but something fundamental has shifted. Trust feels thinner. Silence heavier. The town now knows that knowing someone does not always mean understanding them. 6 lives ended in Cedarbluff. One night rewrote a town's history. And while the echoes of gunfire have faded, the questions remain, lingering in empty chairs, quiet homes, and a community forever changed. Share your opinion on this story, subscribe to Latent True Crime and turn on your notification button to follow other intriguing true crime stories. Thanks for watching.